The issue is they never really form their identity. They grew up in an environment where a parent was telling them, this is what you're supposed to do. This is who you're supposed to be. Their spouse is saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you stay home with the kids? It's all this direction of do, never asking the question like, what does life look like for you? What do you want for yourself?
I'm Tiffany Souter, entrepreneur, wife, mom to 4 girls, and a woman figuring it out just like you. Come on, let's go build your life of and. If you have spent years being needed by your kids, your family, your work, and suddenly the house feels quieter, then this episode is for you. If you are successful, capable, and respected, but find yourself asking, but who am I now? This episode is for you. Because when a role ends, it does not just create space, it creates questions. Questions about purpose, questions about identity, questions about what you actually want, not what's been required of you. Today, we're going to talk about self-trust in one of the least discussed seasons of a woman's life. Not the season of overwhelm, but the season of space. And why learning to trust yourself when no one needs you in the same way might be the most important leadership skill of all. Welcome to another episode of Life of And. This conversation is part of our ongoing work around self-trust to some degree. Not a mindset, but a leadership skill that shows up differently depending on the season of life you're in. In earlier episodes, Brian and I have talked about trusting yourself under pressure, when you're overwhelmed, and when you're just sort of buried under responsibility. And today, we're going to explore a different kind of test. What happens when the pressure lifts? When the house is quieter? When the role that once defined your days no longer needs you in the same way? I'm joined back on the microphone with Brian Kavicky, who coaches leaders through transition, oftentimes identity shifts when roles end and another begins, and the moments when the old scoreboard disappears and the next chapter just isn't quite obvious yet. Brian, welcome to our new studio.
Great to be here.
I want to start by kind of giving you and listeners an understanding of like, why are we on this topic? Because this is not my season of life where life is quiet and I'm wondering or wandering. I'm very much in a high execution phase in both my business and my family. But over the last couple of weeks, I had 2 very acute experiences where one, I was at an event before I was getting ready to speak. Then she said to me, Tiffany, I've listened to your podcast. I've listened to some of your things. I just sent my only kid off to college. They're in their first semester, and the house is so quiet. Everything is eerily still, and I don't know what to do. What do you have for women like me? And I just sort of was like, eek, sounds amazing, was like what my inner voice was saying. I was like, I don't know what to say, actually. And then literally a couple days later, I was having coffee with an executive colleague in town, and he and his wife had just sent their last kid off to college. And I asked him how things were, how's his wife, because I know her as well. And he said, honestly, it's like kind of weird. She's pretty lost right now because she doesn't know where to start. The school was a big part of her community. The things that she did with her time was really wrapped around our son. And so it's kind of a weird season of rebuilding and we kind of don't know where to start. And so I thought, well, this is what we do, is bring questions to the podcast and work on that out loud. And so I wanted to bring you into this, and that's kind of the backdrop. So thanks for coming. True story, when I texted Brian an overview of what I wanted to talk about, what did your email say back to me?
I said, well, this is a deep topic. We got to go. I brought notes. This is a little deeper than the normal.
And I was like, is that good or bad? He's like, yeah, it can be both. Yeah. It can be both. So where does this conversation need to start?
I think it starts with what the real problem is. It's not about the event. It's about how you respond to the event. And your response to the event is based on where your actual identity is, which is the who I am piece. So you said an interesting thing as you were downloading those 2 stories, as that person said to you, my house is empty, it's quiet, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. You said, sounds amazing. So exact same environment, 2 different responses. Mm-hmm. She is struggling with, well, I have loss. You are saying I have some gain. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a very different approach, but it's tied to how I see the world is based on what's going through my head, where I am mentally, and all those things. It goes back to a problem of identity and role separation, is that who I am is tied to what my role is. So in your second story, it was, yeah, she's a little lost right now because her kids' activities, the school activities, everything was wrapped around our son. So she is attached to the son and the activities related to the son. But if we ask that person, so what did you do when your son was out of town? Well, it's sort of like, I waited for him to come home, or I set up the next thing. It's everything was focused on that. And there's a purpose for that, but it makes it hard to pivot from.
Well, I think that as a woman, there becomes this identity around being needed and being useful. He's grinning at me, which is making me feel very uncomfortable suddenly, but I'm going to finish what you'll now undo. But there's an identity that comes with being very needed and very useful. And I think that can become a big stabilizer to our identity.
Oh, yeah.
Is this like responsive, what am I going to do with my time? Let me just wait for 13 seconds and somebody will say my name and I'll know what to do.
Yeah. So think about what attaching to a role gives you. Attaching to a role gives you structure. I can structure my day around the kids' schedule. I can structure my day around their activities. I can structure the way the house works based on who needs me and when. I have purpose now. I have this, my purpose is to raise my children. My purpose is to provide a good home. My purpose is to do this. It provides you with a scorecard, as you use the word scorecard, as I am being measured by my kids' grades and how successful and what their friendships and their relationships. So you have all these things that give you, and you go, oh, this is good for me because I'm being measured. I have purpose. I have structure. I have all these things working for me. And that reinforces this mindset of this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but doing and being are not the same thing.
Okay, so how do we start to disconnect those things? Because I'm thinking there's like, even in the vocabulary of our friendships becomes all of the things that you just said. What I'm doing, where the kids are going and how they're doing in school, and whether they made the ones team or the twos team, and like, are you going to the fundraiser, and did you get the thing back on time, and did you get senior picture? Like, it's like literally this perpetual vocabulary of thoughts and words.
And it's cultural, and it's culturally reinforced. So you think you go to a party like that, one of the first questions somebody asks you is, what do you do? So they're focused on, what is your role? What do you do? How do you do that? Like, I'm a doctor and I'm an attorney, and all of a sudden all the judgments are based on that. But if somebody came up to you at a party and said, so who are you? You would actually struggle with that just because you're not used to the question. But if somebody sat you down and said, let's have a real conversation. Who am I? Who are you? Let's talk about what that is. The degree that I'm going to find roles to attach myself to is the degree that I can answer and respond to that question with, here are my values. Here's who I am as a person. Here's how I think. Here's how I do. Because that is where the separation is needed. So most of the time where people are struggling with this is they can't answer that question, who am I? Because they say things like, I'm a mom, but I'm a mom, or I'm a homemaker, or I'm whatever word they want to use. That's the only way they've ever learned how to do it, and it is reinforced by their social interactions.
So how do you begin? I literally picture, and I've been through some of this process on my own when I left when I was emotionally detaching myself from the outcome of element 3 and being okay with it failing or not. But it's like literally the picture I have in my head is a piece of gum stuck in your hair. Like, how do you even begin to get it out? That like idea of your identity is so, like, how do you begin disconnecting your role from your identity?
What would be the answer to that question? How would you get gum out of your hair?
I would probably cut it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just cut it off.
So.
But what are you left with? No gum in your hair.
Yeah, but also it looks whack.
To you, but to everybody else, it's just, oh, you have a little short hair.
Okay, so my analogy was semi-helpful, but what is the equivalent of cutting gum out of your hair in your life? Like, if you would have been, like me, standing beside the charcuterie spread and lemonade at that event, and she says, what is it that I should do? Because the silence is deafening. What would you have said?
I would have said, well, first you have to decide who you are and go back in time to who am I today? And then you have to spend time deciding who are you in the future, because it can't be what role are you in. It can't be what you're doing. It's who are you? Like, who are you becoming? Now that your kids are gone, what does your life look like? Where are you going to live? How are you going to operate? How are you going to think? How are you going to spend your time? What are your values that you have? Have you ever thought about that? What are the things you love? What are the things you don't love? Any of that stuff. That they have to sit in that, because the issue is that they never really form their identity. A lot of times they grew up in an environment where a parent was telling them, this is what you're supposed to do. This is who you're supposed to be. Their spouse is saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you stay home with the kids? It's all this direction of do, not never asking the question, like, what does life look like for you? What do you want for yourself?
That's interesting. I think one of the women that I talked to, I think she said to me, I had my child really young, like potentially in high school or college, like before she had sort of decided to. And that would probably even perpetuate what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, because you don't have the exploration stage.
And I'm not forced, but I'm pushed into this role. Is that true or false? I feel like, yeah.
When you have a child at a young age, you go from, I thought my life looked like this, to now it looks like this.
So we can put anything in that.
Yeah.
I thought my life was going to look like me moving to this market and being a president. I thought my life was going to look like I was going to be married for 50 years. I thought my life was going to look like I was going to live close to my parents. Like there's a ton of things where disappointment or life is just could be better too. I thought I was going to have to work the rest of my life and I won the lottery. Does it work in that regard?
Yeah.
Okay. So anything where...
I've seen it with spouse deaths too, where they were so attached to their spouse, and it's like a lot of times it's bad stuff where there were problems in their relationship, or they weren't living to their full potential because of how what they had to deal with, their like codependency or any of those things. And when they have that cut out, they're just like, oh, well, this is different than I thought it was going to be. And they have to actually you use the word space, they have to take space and time and sit there and go, okay, what do I want my life to look like? Who am I becoming? What is it? Because you can actually decide who you're going to be if you don't know. So the fix is, if somebody says, well, I don't know who I am, perfect. Decide who you're going to be and decide what that's going to look like and how you're going to operate and how you're going to be, what are your values going to be, and now go down that path. You can effectively reinvent yourself.
So does that mean like practically testing some things? Does that mean just journaling for like what is the thing I do? So
the first thing is to sit down and say, who am I? And you could Google it, like what are who am I questions, but they're sort of the questions that I've been rattling off, and sort of go, okay, what does that look like? What do I want for myself? Because the want thing is hard for people too, of what do I want this to look like? And saying, I like this. I like what this looks like. I'm excited about this. This gives me energy to do that. And then the next stage would be to experiment. It's like, let's see what happens when I live this out. Let's see what happens when I put myself in those positions. Let's see what happens when I spend my time in ways that are consistent with what I've outlined. And that gives you the confidence to go, okay, I like where this is heading. I like how this feels. And I'm just going to continue to explore and sort of own this new who am I piece.
I think it can feel startling to even want something again.
Well, the want is part of the devil's tongue of where negative head thoughts are. So it's, I'm not likable or lovable just the way I am. I don't have enough. I don't have enough education. I don't have enough experience. And the next is, I don't deserve. So the scary part of saying, I want this, is that little voice inside your head that says, but I don't deserve it. It's not okay for me to do this. And that still goes back to young ages where you were very careful about what want and needs and not understanding the difference between those two things.
I think one of the things I'm running through in my mind as well is that those questions could potentially challenge some relationships that you have, friendships that you have, circles you run in, the country club you like, saying like, I want to take, I don't want to say a chance, I want to take this next chapter of my life, could create some dissonance or disconnect in other areas of your life that have historically been very stabilizing. Is that right?
You're correct, yes. It will almost always cause that to happen. But you don't lose all of it. It's not I've lost everything. It's that, some of the relationships that I might have had in the school don't really fit where I'm going, but these two people do. So I'm going to build those relationships more because they align with the direction I'm heading and who I'm becoming.
I want to take a quick moment to thank my partners at Share Your Genius. For the past 4 years, they have been an incredible part of my journey behind the microphone. Share Your Genius is a content and podcast production agency that helps leaders and brands bring their message to life. So whether you're trying to find your voice, develop a content strategy, or get your leader behind a microphone, they're going to help you make it simple, strategic, and impactful. In this scenario, how do you bring your kids along with you? Because they're off adventuring, becoming and exploring in the situation that we were talking about. They're going to college, they're going to live wherever, they're going to find careers, and they're going to grow. How do you reintroduce them to the fact that that's also a season that I'm sharing with them of I too am exploring alongside you? Because it's like, I remember when I went off to college, I pretty much wanted my room, my parents, the grass, everything to stay exactly the same because that was stabilizing on my launching journey. And so then for me to come back and my mom be like, good news. In my new version of myself, I don't like to cook. I would be like, I'm sorry. In my version of you definitely like to cook.
And how would your mom have responded?
My mom probably would have cooked.
Oh.
My mom still cooks.
Well, but that's what she wants to do.
Yeah. Well, let me give my mom some credit in this. She has grown a lot in the last 10 years. Probably more than that, but that's probably when I've been paying the most attention. And her reinvention has not come in her capacity for us, but I would say it's come in her own, just creating more dimension to herself. She got an Airbnb. She it's like, I don't want to say funny little projects in a way that's demeaning to it. It's amazing. It's awesome for our community. She's does some really cool things. So I think as she's found more capacity, she's realized that she has talents and gifts that she didn't know were in her when we were all home and taking all of her capacity.
So the good news for people that say, well, what's going to happen if I change who I am? How is it going to affect my children, especially when your role is attached to your children? Is the good news is your children want a different version of you than the version they had. So I think you're correct that there's a version when they launch that says, I want everything the same. But that pretty quickly pivots to, I don't want my parents to be my parents anymore. I want my parents to actually be my friends. Because if they're my friends and we have a friend relationship and they're not parenting anymore, I can stand them longer. I want to be around. We came back from this weekend and somebody in our office, he was totally on edge. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Because he was just defensive about it. He was like, what's going on? And he said, my mom came into our house and she said, I need to clean your house for you. And I've been on edge since. Well, her mom is still parenting him. She's like, your house is a mess. I'm going to clean it for you. It creates a problem where if he said, I just want my mom to hang out with us and be with us today and do this stuff, it all would have been fine. Same time, different role. So as long as you go, hey, the longer term is, I want a friendship and a relationship with my children, then I can switch and your kids actually get excited about what you're doing and what that is, because it says, well, you're not going to parent me anymore because you're focused over here and I get the version of you that's all good. And some grandparents say, I want to just be a good grandparent now. And they're like, well, what about me? And they get over it and they go, you know what? Yeah, be the grandparent because it solves a lot of problems for us.
So in this season of change, is it how long do you sit in it? Do you go fast? Do you go slow? What's the, I'm not saying prescribed duration, but what does that look like?
The faster you move in starting to brainstorm who you want to be and what you want to do and what's next for you from a values and this is what I want for myself perspective, the quicker you start to experiment. So if I postpone it and I say, well, I'm going to wait and see, or I'm going to delay this, or this is too hard, I just have to not deal with it, nothing changes, nothing moves. And as soon as kid comes back on fall break, you're back in that mode again. As soon as spring break, you're back in that mode again. And what happens is you'll start to distance in those relationships because the the husband that said, my wife is a little lost right now because of this, it's not helping their relationship. They didn't start with children. They're not going to end with children in the house. But there's this friction of the longer we wait to go, hey, who are we even as a couple? And what do we want for ourselves? And what's going to be different about that? The more that there's friction between those two people. Because, you know, if I'm the husband and my wife's going, I just feel so lost because I don't have kids, it's not an attractive quality in a person to go, yeah, I want to hang out with you.
Well, and I think there can also be, again, I'm projecting, but like almost resentment that builds of like, you're not experiencing this loss to the depth that I am. Like I can imagine that playing out.
Yes.
Where there starts to become this imbalance of like, you don't get me. Like, I just feel like that could create.
But it still goes to this root problem of you don't get me because I don't know who I am. So I'm going to blame you for how I feel. And you need to be patient with me. And you like, it'll add to that friction because you have to own that of, you know, I have now realized that I'm too attached to my kids. I got to do something about to figure out who I am because I didn't do that earlier. And I have attached to all these things that were good for other people, but not necessarily good for me. And now I have to do what's good for me.
It's not so dissimilar. I've like made, I think, help me with this parallel. I've made this observation, like when you have a new baby, my sister-in-law just had a new baby. He's like 6 days old. When that is the case, it is an on-demand relationship. Like it just is. And at some point you have to decide as the parent to change that because the kid won't. Like you decide to get him on a sleep schedule or not. You decide that they're going to feed on a schedule or not. You decide like, and so I think in some relationships, parent-child, that always on relationship, it never pivots off of kind of how it was originally formed, which when they're just born, just does kind of need to be an always on thing. And in some ways, I think in this season of life where your kids are moving on and this like detaching, when you were saying like becoming friends with them, it was like actually kind of annoying to me when you were saying that. But I'm seeing it and like even when we most enjoy my parents, it's like when we're skiing together. We're like doing something interesting together. We're both exploring. So it is like, yeah, it's like, it's more of a friendship. I still look to them for advice and I still, in a way that I don't my friends, but the idea of adventuring through life together feels more like a peer relationship than I'm under their rule.
But when you go to them for advice, are you going them as a parent or are you going them as a very close relationship that you deeply trust?
Well, I think I respect their outcomes in life. And so I would say I go to them as a parent, but it's probably not just the role they play. It's also I respect the thing they've done. Does that make sense?
As a parent or as in life?
Probably more in life.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So that's the difference. So the rule is act today as if you mean to go on. So your reference.
Say that again.
Act today is if you mean to go on. So if I'm in the season of hearing this podcast and I just had a baby and I'm going, oh, I don't want to have this problem where I'm freaking out when they go to college. Well, start acting today like they're going to go to college. So what does life have to look like? If I don't want them sleeping in my bed for the rest of their life, in month one, they probably shouldn't sleep in my bed or in my bedroom. If I don't want them to constantly rebel, I better fix that the first time they smart off to me, or else they're going to rebel against me for the rest of their life. So what does that look like? And that means couples going on dates and having relationships and saying, this is our time, not your time. Or where I see it most is the shift of you have a couple and they used to go out to dinner once or twice a week. And then they say, well, we have a kid, we can't do that. Well, that's why they have high chairs. Like you either bring them or you get a babysitter. Why would you change your life for them?
That will be very uncomfortable for some people to hear.
I said this was a deep topic. But it's who do we want to be for a long term? Your window of children or your window in a job is a very short window compared to your life. And this idea of I meant sometimes people have this problem when they've dreamed like all I want to do in life is to be a mom, and they achieve the dream of now I'm a mom. They never solidified their identity, and so when that is broken off, it's very hard to get back. So you just have to decide, but as you said, make the choice. I got to make the choice that this is not what it's going to be. And it is not a selfish choice. It's actually a selfless choice of I'm going to be a person that is so comfortable with myself and so confident in myself and so secure who I am that I can help all the people, be in the relationships with all the people because I'm not attached to anything.
Well, and I think also that person who's strong in their identity can hold space in a non-personal way for the disappointment that can, again, I might be overstating this, but like that can happen when my identity is saying I'm not going to overextend my role here.
Yes.
Does that vocabulary make sense?
Yes.
So I think an example of that happened yesterday. You and I had dinner last night with another colleague, and I don't do very many things in the evenings because it's like prime time for my kids. And it was a Monday. What happens on a Monday? Literally no sporting events ever on Mondays. It's Tuesdays, Thursdays, right? Saturdays. It was like safe zone. And my daughter had a big dress rehearsal, and so her hair had to be done, her makeup had to be done, all this stuff. I was like, honey, I have made this commitment. Like I cannot support you in this, but I can help. Your sister can help you, our nanny, like whatever, my sister-in-law. I can help you get it done, but I'm not going to change my plans. And she was really annoyed with me. She really wanted me to change my plans. And the next morning, I let her be annoyed. And I was like, what do I do? I could have canceled. It was not like life or death. I was like, no, I'm going to keep it. Like, this is part of my and there's going to be disappointment in the space of her life because of this that I chose. I said, I'm sorry that my schedule has disappointed you, but I'm working. Maybe I shouldn't have even apologized.
Did her hair get done?
She looked beautiful. She was super ready. All the things got done.
That?
What she said, what?
That she looked beautiful?
Yes, she felt very confident.
Yeah. So it's
really about feeling confident because it's like a new space. And
yeah. So the question is, was this about your hair or was this about me doing your hair? Because that was the disappointment, is it wasn't you, but the role was hairdresser in that moment. She was saying, no, I'm attached to you. I want you to do this.
Well, she was certain I would do what it took to make her feel confident.
And you did.
Yes, I did.
So why would you apologize for that?
Yes, and I did. Oh, wow.
And that's where people think if I do something different, the outcome will be different. But if I focus on what is the outcome that matters here and what is the objective. So as a parent, your true outcome is that your kids are wildly successful and independent of you. But if I'm attaching to them, that's never going to be the case because they become dependent on you. Mm-hmm. If it's, I need to make sure that my kid is confident for a dress rehearsal, I'm going to give all the resource to do that, but it doesn't have to be me because there's somebody probably better than me to do that job. Then
that's exactly what we solved, actually. My sister-in-law is like amazing. She sent me all this stuff from Target that we need to get. And so I did the online order. Aubrey's going to pick it up. She's going to go do a tutorial. I don't have to do anything.
Right.
But pay $48 for the Target pickup.
And you arranged to have it happen.
Yeah.
And your sister-in-law is thrilled that she got to be the one to do it because she's good. And your daughter said, I am confident.
She'll look way better than if I was there. It's so true. It's so interesting.
But that's what I mean, where you're going to have those tugs that say, I'm doing the wrong thing because people are saying, I want this need met in me. And that reinforces you to go, well, maybe I'm supposed to not go to dinner. Maybe I'm supposed to be there for my kids. But if you're confident in your identity saying, oh no, I have other plans. My role tonight is here. I'm still your mom. I'm going to make sure your needs are met. But my role is to be at this dinner. My role is to attend this. My role is to be successful at work. That's the separation of my identity.
So when I was in the bowels of having no identity outside of my roles, I didn't even know what it sounded like to say, who are you, without saying roles. So I'll ask you the question so that people can hear. What is not that yours is the outcome people are looking for. We all have our own version of it. But like, if somebody was at a party and said, Brian, who are you? What are the words that we use to describe our identities that doesn't use role vocabulary?
It would be your values. Like, who are you? What do you value in life? What are you focusing on? So it would be values like I am a person with high integrity. I am somebody that has Christian values. I am somebody that's like that. That is just a self-description of who you are, because those aren't roles. If you slip and say, I'm a husband, I'm a father, you're slipping into role land. And you just gotta sit on that, because it's like I said, it's cultural. Like people are they're like, really? You'd say that? No, you'd never say that. You're gonna tell them what your role is at a party. The key is that you know who you are as you do that. My role at a party is that, like, if somebody asks me at a party, what do you do? I say, I help CEOs with growth problems in their company. And they're like, okay.
Yeah,
That's my role.
They didn't even hear it.
No, like, check the box. My role was to make you comfortable with what I did. I'll just say that. And they're like, okay.
This is deep, heavy work. Does it happen? Do you have to do it as life goes? Or is it once you've done this work, it stays with you?
Once you've done the work, it stays with you, and your boundaries become better and your decision-making becomes better. But if you go, I can't do this alone, that's where you go, I'm gonna go to therapy, I'm gonna get coaching, I'm going to spend time doing this, I'm gonna take some courses, like find a way to say, I'm going to use this space to figure out who I am. And if you can't figure out who you are, then just figure out who you want to be.
I think in the absence of it, we start to become who other people want us to become, because it serves you've said this before, it serves their outcomes in life instead of your own.
Yeah, and one of the greatest like suction into that is people need me. I do this because they need me, and that feels very important. Yet, if you look at when somebody says you need me, that means you're a vulnerable person. Like you don't solve it. Like, I need a fire engine right now means you're on fire. I need food right now means you're starving. So it's not good for anybody else that you're attached to these roles, because you're always going to be the crutch to them.
So if there's a woman listening to this episode who's feeling a little lonely, maybe a little disoriented, or like unseen and unneeded in a world that sort of used to be like not anymore, what's your advice to her?
I think the first advice is listen to the whispers. There's little whispers in your head that says, it'll be cool, and I wonder if this, and there's little possibilities of stuff that you sort of suppressed and said, you know what, I can't do that right now because I'm a mom. I can't do that because of this. Is what would you do with those whispers? What would you do if you said, you know what, I think there's something here that I can lean on. And that gets you sort of in that momentum. And then you can sit back and go, okay, who do I want to be in this next phase of life? What do I want life to look like? Where do I want to live? And start with sort of those roles, and then get to the values thing last of what's important to me? What do I care about? What matters? You know, how do I want to spend my time? Those types of things, sort of in that order.
I find whenever I was working through change, I would call you and sort of say, like, what are the words I use? So if this woman is trying to orient the people around her to this journey she's on, can you give her the words to say to her husband, to her friends, to her kids, to a social setting that says, what are you doing now that your kid's gone? It's like, like you just basically put hot water on my face. Well, what are the words that she says?
I think the first thing is admit where you're at. I have realized that with my kids gone, that it's a harder transition than I had. And part of the problem is I was pretty attached to being a mom. So what I'm doing now is figuring out what my life's going to look like, what I'm going to be doing, who I am going to become that's not a mom, so that I can figure out what's next for me and us. I just let it there. And I guarantee that if you ever have the guts to tell a person that, they're going to respond by like, that's actually really good. And they will like reinforce that of, yeah, you should do that. I wish I would do those things, just by saying that.
I think one of the things that is so stayed in common for women is that we feel so alone in these seasons of change because we feel afraid to say it out loud. It makes it too real. And we've always been okay for everybody around us. And so admitting we're in this season can be really difficult. And I've seen in every area of my life when there's been change or uncertainty, when I say it, people show up who have been there before, who have experiences, who can make it a little smoother. So it also, I think, can create community of women who are going through it together to encourage each other. So anything else we should say or add to this, Brian's conversation?
I want to go back to the idea of self-trust. If I ask the question, name a person that you don't know that you trust, you can't do that. So if I know that I don't trust people that I don't know, then if I want to eventually trust myself, trust in my abilities, trust in who I am, I have to define what that is first. And then I could say, okay, now I trust me to do that. I trust me to accomplish that. So you got to get that order correct. It's not like, otherwise you just get into this, I don't trust myself. Well, who are you? Well, of course, you can't ever say you're trusted because you don't know who you are.
It's an imperative process that life is going to force us through at some season. I found my, my moment when I was going through potentially losing element 3, and it was destroying me personally. And you rightly recognize, like, the company failing is not you dying. Like, you've got to uncouple this. And so it forced me. It's like taking, like saran wrap off of something that's like perfectly formed to it. You almost can't see it when you're in it. And so sometimes it does take somebody else to help you shine the light differently so that you can see it, how to take it off. So we're all on a journey, but thank you I think this is a really important conversation. I think as women, we need to feel more comfortable sitting together in the uncertainty of being undefined, and that not be an embarrassing place to be, but one that is actually super empowered and an exciting moment of sort of opening the curtains and seeing what's next. So thanks, Brian.
Yep.
If this is a season of life that you're going through, then take a look at the download that we have for you. There's a link in show notes. I don't think it's a download, just the PDF. If you're trying to figure out, I need somebody to help me walk through these questions, sit down with yourself, sit down with your spouse, sit down and take the time to be quiet. The truth of where we are can sometimes be scary, but I found every single time I confront the truth, it's not nearly as scary when you see it as you thought it was in your head. So push forward on this journey. It's a big part of building a life of and is about what's next, and is about being able to hold two things at the same time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to The Life of And. This is your weekly reminder to keep making bold choices, saying clear yeses, and holding space for what matters most. As always, if you like this episode, I'd love for you to drop a review and share it with your friend. It's the fastest way that we can grow the show. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time.